I don't know very much about Clint Eastwood or his directing style, and I'm pretty sure the only movie of his that I've ever seen that he's directed is American Sniper. Which doesn't give me a lot of hope for seeing his movies in the future, considering how overrated I thought that movie was, but my opinions of American Sniper aside, I was excited to watch Gran Torino. I've heard a lot of good things about the movie, and I've been told that it's a must-watch multiple times. And it's also the kind of movie that I want to review more on my channel. I feel like Gran Torino is a movie that lots of people have heard is good, but there aren't many reviews on it to corroborate that, and that's the kind of movie that I want to review. Moving on though, I like Gran Torino. While I think the first half isn't as strong as the second, if I watch the movie again, that might change. Gran Torino is a character study, and while it does leave the first half of the film at the mercy of how interesting you think the characters are, it does make the final sequence of the film very satisfying. There is a lot of effort put into giving the audience a picture of the main character, Walt, and his life as a war veteran. From his relationship with his family to his views on society, there isn't a lot left out of the film's depiction of Walt. And this is key to why I thought the first half of the film wasn't as good. While I appreciate the depth of Walt's character, I find the way it's presented for the first half of the film a bit tiresome. His character isn't something that's radically different from characters that I've already seen. It's true that later in the film the character does become more interesting, and his arc does add a lot of heart to the film. For the opening scenes of Gran Torino, Walt isn't much more than a racist and angry old man who's dissatisfied with modern day society. Fortunately, the good thing about having him be such an archetypal character in this story is that it makes the rest of the film very refreshing and emotional. Seeing this kind of character be treated as something beyond the one-dimensional punchline that it usually is made for a legitimately heartwarming conclusion to the film. Walt's character arc is one that I think fits his character accurately as well. It's not cliche and it's not predictable. His character has consistency in how he treats people. Although he has been hardwired to think a certain way by the things that have happened in his life, he still admires specific traits in people, and that works as the basis for his character arc, which is something I wasn't expecting and something I enjoyed about the latter half of the film. It doesn't feel like the movie pushed his character into situations that altered his belief. It feels more like a natural process that, although it does feel slightly rushed sometimes, I forgive how rushed it feels because of how much sense it makes for Walt as a character. Unfortunately, outside of this, the characters aren't as strong or interesting. One thing I have heard about Eastwood's directing is something that affects the performances of other characters. Clint isn't a fan of multiple takes, and I think that's something that Gran Torino needed. I didn't notice it as much in American Sniper when I watched that, but there is some noticeably weak line delivery and awkward body language that is present throughout Gran Torino in most of the characters that aren't Walt. It might be the fact that Clint Eastwood has gotten used to starring in his own movies and no longer requires multiple takes to get things right, but it seemed to me like the actors around him needed more time in scenes where emotions were running high. And although I don't think Clint Eastwood needed to change much about himself to fit the character, I think regardless his performance is pretty praiseworthy. His directing in the technical department is half and half for me. While I don't think the story needed anything drastically visually stylized to work or to tell the story properly, I do think the editing and the cinematography could have been more creative. They work well and the close-ups are at the right time and that kind of thing, but a majority of the time the most interesting part of the visuals was the colors. There isn't a lot to say about them, I just think they were really nice to look at, and I feel like they gave off a good vibe about how the audience is supposed to interpret the town that Gran Torino takes place in, and what the people are like there. The one thing about Gran Torino's presentation that I really liked was the style of music that it used. There isn't a lot of music in the film, but what there is reminiscent of drums that are used in like military marches, which I personally think is a really cool way of contextualizing Walt's actions in the movie and reminding the audience of his background without constantly using exposition. I don't really have a final statement to make, so...
Gran Torino... First watch is a 7. I'll probably watch it again, and if the first half is more interesting when I watch it again, then it's probably an 8. I think you should watch it, is really the final comment there. Yeah, 7 or 8.